It was a quiet evening in the house that once echoed with laughter, the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. I sat in the living room, folding clothes that weren't mine, listening to the distant hum of the television coming from my son's room. He used to watch TV beside me, his head resting on my shoulder. But now, there was laughter in that room, a different kind, a woman's laughter. His wife's and mine had long faded. Sometimes I wonder when things changed. Maybe it wasn't sudden. Maybe it happened slowly, in the quiet spaces between meals and moments. After my husband passed, I told myself that as long as my son was happy, I'd never feel alone. I worked day and night, cooking, cleaning, doing small stitching jobs for neighbors. Every coin I earned was for him, his school uniform, his books, his dreams. He was my world, and I believed I was his. But lately, when I knock on his door, he doesn't answer right away, and when he does, it's with that look, unpolite, distant, as if he's speaking to a guest. That evening, I knocked gently, just to ask if they wanted tea. I heard his wife giggle, then whisper something I couldn't make out, a pause, then his voice, softer than before, saying, "Mom, we're busy right now." It wasn't rude, but it wasn't warm either. I froze for a moment, my hand still on the doorframe. The same frame where I'd once measured his height every birthday, marking each inch with pride. I smiled faintly and said, "All right, Beta. I'll keep it warm for you." No answer came, only more laughter. I walked back to the kitchen, my feet heavy. I stared at the teapot, the steam rising and fading, just like the warmth between us. As I sat alone, I looked around the house, the walls my husband had painted himself, the photo of our wedding day still hanging crooked by the dining table. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. There was love once. Now there was distance. Maybe this is how mothers fade, not all at once, but piece by piece, replaced by someone new in their child's world. Still, I tried to convince myself it was just adjustment. "She's new," I whispered. "He just needs time." But deep down, I knew. That laughter behind the door wasn't just happiness. It was the sound of a bond shifting, a place in his heart changing hands. And as I stared into the dim kitchen light, I felt the house listening too. The same house that once carried lullabies, now holding my quiet ache. That night when I went to bed, the silence felt louder than ever, and though I didn't cry, my heart whispered a truth I wasn't ready to face yet. Something precious had already begun to slip away. The next morning, I woke early, like always. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the house was still half asleep. I brewed tea for everyone, 2 cups with sugar, 1 without, just the way he liked it. But when I reached their room, I stopped. His wife's voice floated out softly, followed by a giggle. Then her tone shifted, sharp, deliberate, and low enough that she thought I couldn't hear. "She still acts like this is her house," she said. "When will she understand things have changed?" My heart sank a little, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to start the day with bitterness. I left their cups on the table and went back to the kitchen. When they finally came out, she smiled at me sweetly, that kind of smile that hides something behind it. "Good morning, Ma," she said. "You really don't have to wake up so early every day. We can manage our own breakfast now." Her words were polite, but they carried a meaning I couldn't ignore. Still, I smiled back. "It's okay, Beta. I've done this for years. It feels strange to stop now." My son looked at her, not me, before saying, "Let her rest if she wants." "Ma, you don't need to do everything." There it was again, that distance, widening a little more each day. Over the next few weeks, small things started to change. The cushions I loved were replaced by modern ones she ordered online. My old curtains, the ones I stitched by hand, disappeared. Even the kitchen I once ruled now felt like a place I needed permission to enter. She'd step in behind me and say softly, "Ma, I'll handle the cooking." You should go rest, but it wasn't kindness. It was control, hidden behind smiles. One afternoon, I noticed she'd rearranged the family photo wall. My husband's picture, the one my son and I lit incense before every Friday, was missing. When I asked, she said, "Oh, it didn't match the new decor, Ma. I'll put it somewhere else." I felt something twist inside me. "He built this house with his hands," I whispered. "Every wall, every nail. You can change the paint, Beta, but not the memories." She smiled faintly, brushing it off. "Of course, Ma." That evening, my son came home early. Before I could say anything, she ran to him with fake tears glistening in her eyes. "Your mother scolded me," she said softly. "I was only trying to help, but she keeps finding faults." I froze at the doorway, hearing her words. My son's face darkened, not with anger, but with disappointment directed at me. "Mom," he sighed. "She's trying to adjust. Don't make her feel unwelcome." I wanted to speak, to tell him the truth, but the words stuck in my throat. All I could say was, "I didn't scold her, Beta. He interrupted, shaking his head. "Please, Mom, don't start again." And just like that, my voice, the voice that once guided him through life, was silenced. That night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. I could hear them laughing inside their room. I told myself I wouldn't cry. But sometimes tears don't ask for permission. I remembered how he used to sit by me, holding my hand after my husband's death, saying, "I'll never let you feel alone." Ma! Now those promises felt like a story told to someone else. Days turned into weeks. Every time I tried to help, I was told to rest. Every time I tried to speak, I was told I was overthinking. Slowly, without realizing it, I became a guest in my own home. And yet, through all the pain, I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, but because I still believed one day he'd see through her games. Still believed the bond between a mother and son couldn't be erased by whispers. But I was wrong, because the day was coming when her whispers would turn into accusations, and his silence would become my punishment. It was a Saturday evening, the kind that used to bring warmth into this house. The smell of food, the soft clinking of plates, and the sound of my son's laughter once made these walls feel alive. I wanted to bring that back, even if just for a night. So I decided to cook his favorite meal, the same one I used to make when he was a boy, coming home tired from school, spicy lentils, fried okra, and warm rotis straight off the pan. I spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen, humming softly to myself, pretending everything was still the same. My hands trembled a little as I set the table, arranging everything neatly, 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 folded napkins. For once, I wanted us to sit together again. When they came downstairs, I smiled and said softly, "Dinner's ready, Beta. I made your favorite." His wife wrinkled her nose slightly, whispering under her breath, "Oh, oily food again." I pretended not to hear. He sat down, glanced at the dishes, then looked at her. "If you don't like it, we can order something else," he said. Something in my chest sank. No, I said quickly. "I can make something else for her too." "It's fine," she waved her hand dismissively. "No need, Ma, we'll just order pizza. It's easier." The word Ma sounded hollow, not affectionate, but practiced. I sat across from them as they scrolled through their phones, discussing toppings. My food sat untouched in front of me. The smell that once brought joy now only filled the silence. When the delivery came, they laughed together, joking, teasing, feeding each other small bites. I just watched quietly. Every sound of their laughter felt like a small knife twisting deeper. Finally, I whispered, "You could have at least tasted what I made, Beta." He looked up briefly. "Ma, it's not a big deal. Don't start again." "I'm not starting anything," I said softly. "I just wanted us to have dinner like before." His wife sighed dramatically. See, she's upset again. "I told you this would happen." And before I could even respond, he slammed his hand on the table. "Enough!" he shouted. "You always find some way to make her feel bad? Why can't you just let us live in peace?" The room went silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop. I stared at him, My son. The boy who once cried if I scolded him too harshly, now standing in front of me, eyes burning with anger I didn't recognize. "I just cooked dinner," I whispered, my voice trembling. He stepped closer, his tone sharper. "She's my wife now, not you. Stop interfering in our lives." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Those words, simple, cruel, final, echoed in my ears, over and over. "She's my wife now, not you." I felt something inside me break, a soundless crack that only a mother can feel. He didn't stop there. "You always act like I'm still a child. I'm married now. Things have changed. You need to accept that." My lips quivered. "I raised you alone, Beta. Everything I did was for you." He turned away. "And I'm grateful. But that doesn't give you the right to control me." His wife placed a hand on his arm and said softly, "Let's just go upstairs, please." He looked at me once more, eyes full of irritation, not love, and said, "Ma, just leave us alone." Then, as I tried to take a step forward, he pushed the door, gently at first, then firmly, until it shut between us. That sound, the door closing, felt louder than his words. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wood, hearing their voices fade behind it. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just outside his room, I was outside his heart. The food on the table grew cold. The house felt heavier than ever before. I sat down, staring at the half-eaten roti still in my hand. The same hands that once held him when he was sick, now shaking with disbelief. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Only silence, and in that silence, I finally understood. A mother's love can survive distance, anger, and even time, but it cannot survive being shut out. That night, the laughter upstairs grew faint, then disappeared. And somewhere deep within me, something else disappeared too. The night stretched on endlessly after that door closed. I couldn't bring myself to move. The house that once felt alive now pressed against me with a silence that screamed. The plates on the table were still there. My son's untouched food. The rotis gone cold. The smell of curry fading into the air like a memory I didn't want to lose. I gathered the dishes slowly, one by one, and carried them to the kitchen. Each sound, the clatter of a spoon, the drip of water from the tap, echoed too loud in the emptiness. My hands trembled as I rinsed the plates. It wasn't just the cold water. It was everything inside me trembling too. I leaned against the counter for a moment, and that's when I saw it, the faint reflection of my face in the window glass. Tired eyes. A small woman who had once been called Ma with warmth, now standing like a stranger in her own kitchen. For a moment, I let myself remember. The nights I stayed awake sewing his school uniforms by candlelight. The times I skipped dinner so he could have a full plate. The mornings I walked him to school holding his tiny hand, promising him a life better than mine. I gave him everything, and tonight, he gave me nothing but silence. The weight of it all broke something inside me. I sank to the floor, the cold tiles pressing against my knees. And that's where the tears came, not loud, not desperate, just quiet. Like rain falling on an empty street, I whispered his name between sobs, hoping somehow he'd hear it through the walls, through the noise of his new life. But no one came. The house had never felt this quiet. Even the clock seemed to tick slower, as if time itself pitied me. In that stillness, I reached for the chair my husband once used to sit on, the one at the end of the table. His cup still sat in the cabinet, his photo above it, smiling gently as if nothing in the world had changed. I touched the frame softly. "You'd know what to do," I murmured. "He would have listened to you." My husband had been my strength, calm, patient, protective. When he passed away, I promised him I'd raise our son with love and dignity. I kept that promise. But I never imagined I'd end up fighting for a place in my own home. The memories came rushing back. His first steps, his first job the day he got married. I remembered how proud I was that day. How I'd cried tears of joy watching him put the garland around her neck. Now those same tears burned my eyes for a different reason. I wiped my face, stood up slowly, and whispered to myself, "No more tears." Crying wouldn't bring back the boy I raised. Crying wouldn't change her whispers or his blindness. That night, I decided something quietly. I wouldn't beg for love anymore. If I was to live under this roof, I would do it with dignity, not desperation. I looked around the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd spent years nurturing a family, and realized that it no longer felt like mine. But even if I had lost this house, I wouldn't lose myself. As I turned off the lights and walked to my room, the floor still glistened where my tears had fallen. Maybe tomorrow, no one would notice, but those tears would stay, deep in the cracks of this old kitchen floor, as proof that love, no matter how pure, can break when pushed too far. I closed my door quietly, the same way he had closed his earlier. Only difference was, mine didn't shut out love. It shut out pain. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sleep hadn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the door closing, the way his voice had turned cold. But something in me felt different now. Lighter in a painful way, like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding. I made my tea quietly and sat near the window. The sky was gray, soft rain falling outside. Maybe it was a sign, washing away what needed to be gone. As I sipped, I looked around the room my husband once called his study. It had been untouched for years, the shelves filled with his old files, the faint smell of ink and dust still lingering. I hadn't opened that drawer in a long time. Not since the day he passed away, but today, something pulled me toward it, a quiet whisper inside that said, "Look there." I kneeled by his old wooden desk, its polish faded and corners chipped. As I ran my fingers over it, I could almost hear his voice again, calm and steady. "Take care of our boy. He's got my stubbornness in your heart." That's a dangerous mix. A faint smile crossed my face before fading into a sigh. I opened the drawer slowly. Inside were scattered papers, old bills, family photos, a few of his notebooks tied with twine. But at the very back, tucked beneath a folder, something caught my eye. A small sealed envelope, yellowed by time. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. On the front, in his handwriting, were the words, "For our son, to be given when he's ready." My breath caught. I sat down on the floor, clutching the letter. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to open it. When I finally did, the paper inside felt fragile, like the words had been waiting too long to be read. "My dear son, if you're reading this, it means life has moved on in ways I couldn't control. I built this home not just with bricks, but with love, your mother's love most of all. She gave up everything for us. This house belongs to her, legally and rightfully. When you are ready, when you have proven you can protect what love truly means, she will pass it to you. Until then, respect her. For this home stands because of her strength, not mine." Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. His words weren't just instructions, they were protection. A final shield he'd left behind for me. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered, "You knew. You always knew." I opened the drawer again and found the property documents neatly folded beneath. The title, in my name. My husband had left me the home, trusting that I'd know when the time was right to hand it over. And I realized, that time was not now. Not when love had turned into entitlement. Not when respect had been replaced by control. I wiped my tears and placed the papers back safely, locking the drawer. A quiet determination rose inside me. I would not use this knowledge for revenge, but I would no longer let them treat me as invisible. Just then, I heard footsteps. It was her, the daughter-in-law. She peeked into the study and frowned. "Ma, what are you doing here? This room's always so dusty." I smiled faintly, folding the letter into my palm. "Just cleaning a bit. Your father-in-law liked things tidy," she smirked. "You really don't have to hold on to the past so much." Her words stung, but I stayed calm. Sometimes, Beta, the past is the only thing that teaches us who people really are. She looked confused for a second, then walked away, muttering under her breath. When she left, I sat back down, my fingers brushing the locked drawer once more. My husband's words echoed in my mind. When he's ready. I wasn't sure if my son would ever be ready. But I knew one thing for certain. The house she believed was hers wasn't, and soon enough that truth would come to light, whether they were ready or not. The days that followed felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. I moved through the house quietly, every sound amplified, the clinking of dishes, the ticking clock, the echo of voices that didn't speak to me anymore. But the letter stayed with me. Folded neatly in my shawl, it was my secret armor, fragile but powerful. That morning, I was arranging the kitchen shelves when I heard the study door creak open. I froze. My daughter-in-law's voice followed, sharp and casual. Ma never lets anyone in here. What's she hiding? My heart thudded. I wiped my hands and stepped out just in time to see her bent over the old desk, rummaging through drawers. The very drawer I had locked. How did you? I started. She looked up with a smug smile, waving a small key between her fingers. Found it in your old sorry box. You really should hide things better. Before I could respond, she pulled out the folder, the one with the property papers. The color drained from my face. Her eyes scanned the title page. For a moment, her expression was blank. Then came the disbelief. This house is in your name? Her tone was venomous, trembling with rage and shock. I didn't answer. Silence was my weapon now. The same silence that had once been mistaken for weakness. She stepped closer, waving the documents at me. All this time, you let us believe it was my husband's. You let us plan renovations, sell furniture. You watched me run this house like it was mine. I took a deep breath. Because you made it yours. Without asking. Her voice rose, breaking. You planned this, didn't you? You wanted to humiliate me and make me look like a fool. Her words cut deep, but I stood still. No, I only wanted peace. But peace doesn't live where respect dies. Just then, my son entered. He stopped mid-step, confused by the tension in the air. What's going on here? She turned to him, furious. Ask your mother. Ask her why she's been hiding that she owns this house. He looked at me, eyes wide, unsure whom to believe. Is it true? I reached into my shawl and took out the letter. My husband's handwriting, soft, steady, undeniable. I handed it to him. Read it. He hesitated, then unfolded the paper. His eyes moved across the words slowly. The silence in the room grew thick, broken only by the faint hum of rain outside. When he finished, he looked shattered. He left everything to you? I nodded gently. He trusted I'd know when you were ready to take care of this family. That time hasn't come yet, my daughter-in-law scoffed. Unbelievable. You're using your dead husband's words to control us. I turned toward her, my voice steady. No, I'm using them to protect what he built, and what I built beside him. Her face twisted with rage. You can't do this. My husband has a right. He will, I interrupted softly, when he earns it. Not when you demand it. My son stepped back, torn between us. Enough, I need time to think. He walked out, leaving the echo of his footsteps behind. The air felt heavy again, not with fear this time, but with a quiet, shifting power. The daughter-in-law slammed the papers on the table and hissed, You think this changes anything? You're old. Time's on my side. I met her glare, calm and unflinching. Then I'll wait. I've done that all my life. Waiting is something I'm very good at. She stormed off, her heels clicking like thunder down the hallway. I stood there alone, the rain now louder against the window. The house, for the first time in years, felt like mine again. Not because of a signature, but because I finally remembered who I was before the silence. I looked at the papers, then folded them away carefully. The storm had begun, and this time I wasn't the one who would break. The rain didn't stop that night. It came down hard, beating against the windows like an old warning. I sat in my room, the documents tucked safely beneath my pillow. while the rest of the house stayed cloaked in silence, an uneasy kind of silence that follows a truth too big to be ignored. Down the hallway, I could hear their voices, muffled, angry, urgent. My son and his wife were arguing. Her tone was sharp, his softer, uncertain. I didn't need to hear the words to understand. The storm outside had found its echo inside this home. "She planned this from the start," my daughter-in-law hissed, pacing across their room. "She's been sitting on that will for years, waiting to humiliate me." My son ran a hand through his hair, his voice tired. "Stop it, Maya. You're blowing this out of proportion. She didn't plan anything." "Oh, really?" she snapped. "You think it's normal that your father left everything to her? That she hid it from you?" "She didn't hide it," he murmured. "She protected it. You've seen how things have been lately. You pushed her." "I pushed her?" Maya spun around, her face twisted in disbelief. "I've done everything for this house. I cleaned, I planned, I hosted your clients, your family dinners, while she sat there judging me." "You insulted her, Maya," he said quietly. "You made her feel small in her own home." She laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Her home, exactly. That's the problem. You still think it's hers, but one day it's supposed to be ours. Yours and mine. I'm your wife, David. You have to choose where your loyalty lies." That last line cut deep. Even through the wall, I felt it. My son didn't respond right away. I imagined his silence, the kind that carries guilt, confusion, and love all tangled together. The next morning, Maya's behavior changed. Her words were sugar-coated now, her tone soft and careful. She offered me tea, asked if I needed help with laundry, all things she had never done before. But behind those polite gestures, her eyes were calculating. I knew that look. It was the same one I used to give my husband when I wanted something I hadn't yet earned. She had a plan. That afternoon, I found her in the living room talking on the phone, her voice hushed but hurried. She didn't notice me standing by the doorway. "Yes, I'll need the lawyer's number." "No, she doesn't know yet, but I'll make sure the documents come into my hands soon. Trust me, I can make David sign if I have to." My breath caught in my throat. The betrayal had deepened. I stepped back quietly, careful not to make a sound. My heart pounded as I walked to my room. She wasn't just angry, she was dangerous now. Later that evening, I found my son sitting alone on the porch, staring into the rain-soaked garden. His face looked older, burdened. "David," I said softly, stepping beside him. He didn't look at me right away. "I don't know what to do anymore, Ma." I sat down next to him. "You do know. You're just afraid of what your choice will cost you." He sighed. "She's my wife, Ma. I can't keep fighting her." "But I can't hurt you either." I looked out into the darkness. Sometimes love asks us to fight for what's right, not who's ours. He turned to me finally, his eyes wet. "You think I've failed you?" "No," I said, touching his hand gently. "You've just forgotten who you are. Your father didn't raise you to choose between truth and comfort. He raised you to stand with what's right, even when it breaks your heart." He didn't answer, but I could see the words sink into him. Slowly. Inside, Maya watched from the window. Her lips pressed tight. She saw his hand in mine, his guilt melting into understanding, and she knew she was losing control. That night, as the rain eased into a steady drizzle, I could sense her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to accept defeat quietly, and in the stillness of the house, I realized the next storm wouldn't come from the sky. It would come from within these walls. The storm eventually passed, but its traces lingered, in the walls, in the silence. In the hollow way my son and his wife avoided my eyes. Days turned into weeks. I moved through the house like a shadow, cleaning the same corners, folding the same towels, pretending everything was fine. But every morning I could feel it, their whispers, their coldness, the tension growing heavier. One evening I caught Maya going through my drawers again. The documents weren't there, I'd hidden them long ago, but her frustration was written across her face. When she saw me at the doorway, she froze for a second before smirking. "You can't keep everything forever," she said softly. Someday you'll have to let go, I met her gaze. Letting go isn't always losing, Maya. Sometimes it's freedom. She looked confused, even irritated, but I didn't say more. I had already made my decision. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life I had built and broken in the same place. I thought of my husband's voice, the warmth of his hand when he told me, "Take care of our home, no matter what." I had done that. But now I knew. This home wasn't just made of bricks and memories. It was made of peace, and I had lost mine here. So before dawn, I quietly packed a small suitcase. Just a few clothes, some photographs, and the documents. The only proof of what I had endured and what I still owned. When the first light touched the windows, I left a note on the table. It said only 4 words. "This house is yours." But beneath those words, hidden in my heart, was another sentence I didn't write. "The peace is mine." When they woke up, I was already gone. Maya stood in the hallway holding the note, confusion turning to triumph. "She's finally left," she said. "We can do what we want now." But within days, the truth of my leaving began to sink in. The bills came. The plumbing broke. The lawyer called, reminding them that the ownership was still under my name, and nothing could be sold or changed without my consent. Their laughter faded into arguments. Meanwhile, I was living in a small rented flat near the seaside, quiet, sunlit, peaceful. I spent my mornings watering plants, my evenings watching the horizon. I had no riches, no servants, but I had something far greater, calm. Weeks later, one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my son stood there. He looked thinner, older, and the pride in his eyes had been replaced by something softer. Regret. "Ma," he said, his voice trembling. "I came to bring you home," I smiled gently. "I am home, Beta." He lowered his head. "You were right. I let her change me. I forgot what you taught me. I don't want your property, Ma. I just want you." Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't from pain this time. I reached out and cupped his face. "You don't need to beg for love, my son. You were born from it." Behind him, I could see Maya standing by the car, her eyes downcast. For the first time, she didn't look defiant. She looked lost. I stepped forward and said quietly, "Sometimes when a door closes, it's not punishment. It's protection." He looked at me, understanding slowly dawning. As he turned to leave, I closed the door behind them, gently, peacefully. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel shut out. I felt free. A mother's love had built that home, but her self-respect had rebuilt her soul, because some doors are meant to close so that new ones can finally open.